5 bills have already been passed for first reading, and the Senate will be considering 5 bills for second reading, while 2 bills will be coming for third reading. Now, let's go straight to the chamber to continue with the proceedings for the day.
The Clerk of the Senate to read the short title of the bill.
Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, National Youth Commission Establishment Bill 2021, SB 686, first reading.
National Youth Commission Establishment Bill 2021, SB 686, first reading taken. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the first order of the day is the presentation and consideration of the report of the Committee of Science and Technology on the screening of Mr. Halilu Ahmad Shaba for appointment as Director General of the National Space Research and Development Agency. Distinguished senators will recall that the request of Mr. President Commander-in-Chief was referred to the committee on Wednesday, 3rd March 2021. Mr. President, you may wish to invite distinguished Senator Oche Lilian Ekunufe, Chairman of the committee, to move the motion for the presentation and consideration of the report.
Senator Uche Lilian Ekunufe. Point of order, Senator Samegu.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Senator Sam Egu, representing Ebonyi North. Mr. President, just this morning, I'm a member of the Committee on Public Petitions. And just this morning, after presentation of petitions to this Hello Chamber, you refer them to the committee and ask us to do within 2 weeks.
Please, distinguished, continue, please.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, my name is Senator Uche Lilian Ekunufe. Mr. President, I represent Anambra Central. I'm from Anambra State. Mr. President, I move that the Senate do receive and consider the reports of the Committee on Science and Technology on the confirmation of the nomination of Mr. Halilu Shaba for appointment as Director General of the National Space Research and Development Agency. Mr. President, I so move.
Yes, Senator Ezinwa Onyewuchi.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. My name is Senator Ezinwa Onyewuchi, and I represent Imo East Senatorial District of Imo State. I rise to second the motion as moved. I so second, Mr. President.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that the Senate do receive and consider the report of our Committee on Science and Technology, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. You may lead the report, please. Chairman, you present the report. I hope you will give us an abridged presentation. Okay, thank you.
Consider the request of Mr. President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Federal Republic of Nigeria, for the confirmation of the appointment of Dr. Halilu Shaba as the Director General, National Space Research and Development Agency. You may also recall that the request was subsequently referred to our committee for further legislative action. Mr. President, the power of the Senate to screen and confirm is on page 2. Section 14, subsection 1 of the National Research, Section 14, subsection 1 of the National Space Research and Development Agency Act 2010 vested the power to confirm the appointment of the Director General of the National Space Research and Development Agency on the Senate. Thus, there shall be a DG for the agency appointed by the President on the recommendation of the Council, subject to the confirmation of the Senate. Requirement for appointment as Director General of the National Space Research and Development Agency is on page 3. Section 14, subsection 2 of the National Space Research and Development Agency Act 2010 states the requirement for appointment as Director General, National Space Research and Development Agency as follows. The Director General shall be a person with a minimum of 15 years demonstrable research experience in science and technology and knowledgeable in space science. The nominee has shown evidence of more than 21 years of postdoctoral research experience in space science, 6 years above the minimum requirement. He was cleared by the Nigerian Police and the Department of Security Service as a person eligible for appointment as Director General, National Space Research and Development Agency. The nominee provided evidence of tax clearance and code of conduct acknowledgement slip. Screening of the nominee and findings. You can find that on page 5, Mr. President. The nominee appeared before the committee on Monday, 22nd March in the meeting room 204, Senate New Building, National Assembly. The nominee was duly informed that the screening exercise would be thorough to determine his capabilities to successfully hold the office of the Director General of the National Space Research and Development Agency. He was equally informed about the expectation of the Senate and the nation at large if eventually he is confirmed by the Senate. During the screening exercise, Mr. President, the nominee was thoroughly interrogated on general matters relating to space science and technology. His response to the issues raised were satisfactory and even transcend the expectations of the committee. He displayed superlative expertise in space science and technology, as well as demonstrated high level of preparedness and capabilities to head the space agency. The recommendation is on page 6, Mr. President. The committee is satisfied with the qualification, performance, and suitability of the nominee for the position of the Director General, National Space Research and Development Agency. From the foregoing, Mr. President, the committee is convinced that the nominee for the Director General of the National Space Research and Development Agency, Dr. Halilu Shaba, is eminently qualified to hold the office he is nominated for. Accordingly, the committee hereby recommends Dr. Halilu Shaba to the Senate for confirmation. Mr. President, you can see our prayer on page 6, that the Senate do confirm the nomination of Dr. Halilu Ahmed Shaba as the Director General, National Space Research and Development Agency. Mr. President, you can see also page 7, the Senate Committee on Science and Technology expresses its appreciation to the President of the Senate, principal officers, and indeed all distinguished senators for the continuous support, confidence, and finding us worthy to serve on this assignment. Mr. President, this is a brief summary of our confirmation of this nominee by Mr. President.
Thank you. Deputy Chief Whip.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. I want to thank the chairman of this committee, distinguished Senator Iom, for a very thorough job. I believe from what we have had and my own personal knowledge of the issue also, I want to say that, of course, this is a person who has had his career within that agency since inception. I know my distinguished deputy leader, who was the pioneer of that agency, will have something to say also. But suffice it to say that what I've seen very peculiar here and very gladdening too is the fact that somebody has edged a career in an agency and has gotten to that peak where by merit he is found very capable and able and has been so recommended and nominated by Mr. President for confirmation as a Director General and Chief Executive Officer of that agency. Mr. President, the significance here is we've seen situations where the tendency to bring people from outside to head agencies when there are qualified people under, has been sometimes very worrisome. I was in service and I knew this is something that has always been a major issue in many agencies. So this is a very clear example, and I think it will encourage those who are in similar bodies to continue to work very hard, knowing fully well that they can be considered on merit for this kind of position. With these few comments, I know what we come to consider. I urge my colleagues to give their nod for this nominee. Thank you.
Deputy Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Robert Ajay Borofis, Senator representing Ondo North Senatorial District. I am a member of this committee that produced this report. But I have to add that I was the pioneer Director General of this agency, where I served for 10 years. And during my tenure, Dr. Shaba was in the agency. I worked closely with him. In addition to that, I was the chairman of Senate Committee on Science and Technology for a period of 8 years. And also, he worked closely with me. We all agree that the agency has been struggling to regain its original image in terms of productivity, in terms of discipline, in terms of credibility. And I sincerely believe that Dr. Chaba is capable of re-engineering the agency and bringing it back to the level of its past glory. I have worked with him, he's cool-headed, he's intelligent, and he's a team player. And he's completely detribalized. And I think in the interest of this agency and the investment of the nation in this agency, for us to allow a man like him to captain this agency. So I appeal to my colleague to please support the recommendation of this committee. Thank you, Mr.
Leader.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, I rise to move a motion for the Senate to resolve into the Committee of the Whole to consider this report. I so move.
Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I so second.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that the Senate resolves into Committee of the Whole to consider the report of our Committee on Science and Technology, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Distinguished colleagues, approval Will the Senate approve the nomination of Mr. Halilu Ahmad Shaba for appointment as Director General of the National Space Research and Development Agency? Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, I would like to move a motion for the Senate to reserve to plenary in order for the chairman to report progress.
Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I so second.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that the Senate reverse to plenary for the chair to report progress say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. The Senate and the Committee of the Whole consider the report of the Committee on Science and Technology on the screening of Mr. President's nominee for appointment as the Director General, National Space Research and Development Agency, NASDA, and approve the nomination of Mr. Halilu Ahmad Shaba as the Director General, National Space Research and Development Agency. Is this a true reflection of what transpired in the Committee of the Whole? Confirmation.
Senators will recall that the bill was referred to the committee on Tuesday, 19th May 2020. Mr. President, you may wish to invite distinguished Senator Abdullahi Adamu, the chairman of the committee, to move the motion for the presentation and consideration of the report.
Distinguished Senator Abdullahi Adamu, Turakin Kefi.
Very distinguished colleagues, I am Senator and I do represent Nasarawa West in the Senate for the Federal Republic of Nigeria. It is my pleasure to lay and present the bill on an act to establish the National Food Reserve Agency and for other matters connected.
I need someone to second it. Senator Bima Mohamed Enagi.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, my highly respected colleagues. My name is Senator Bima Mohamed Enagi. I represent the people of Niger South from Niger State. I rise to second the motion that the Senate receives and consider the report of the Senate Committee on Agriculture and Rural Development in respect of the National Food Reserve Agency. I so second.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that the Senate do receive and consider the report of our Committee on Agriculture and Rural Development say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Chairman, you may lead the report. Chairman, you may present the report.
Your Excellency, the Senate President, my very, very distinguished colleagues, it is my pleasure to present this bill for an act to establish the National Food Reserve Agency and for matters connected therewith, 2020 SB 189. The introduction. The bill for an act to establish the National Food Reserve Agency and for matters connected therewith, 2021 SB 189, was read for the first time in this hallowed chamber on Wednesday, 20th November 2019. The bill seeks to establish the National Food Reserve Agency for the purposes of storing food grains and other food commodities for strategic purposes. The Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, at its sitting on Tuesday, the 19th of May, 2020, read it for the second time and referred same to the Committee on Agriculture and Rural Development for further legislative action. The agency, when established, will implement the overall National Food Reserve policy to ensure a reliable supply of designated commodities in the country. The recent mandate of the President during the COVID-19 pandemic to distribute 70,000 metric tons of grains from the Strategic Grains Reserve shows clearly how important it is for a country to have a food reserve agency. With the existence of the agency, the emergency food crisis will be taken care of, especially during the period of pandemic, as we are presently witnessing in the country. There will also be a reduction in post-harvest losses as silos, warehouses, equipment and ancillary facilities, and other suitable storage facilities will be installed and maintained. The membership of the committee is there. The methodology is also there, set out for want of time. Observations. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, with this agency in place, Nigeria will be taking the right step in the right direction as replicated in other countries, notably in Africa. Zambia has a food reserve act to manage national strategic food reserves and ensure national food security and income through quality marketing and storage services. The Zambian model has a strict mandate of buying and holding only national strategic commodity reserves to meet acute local shortages in supply. Another example is Tanzania's National Food Reserve Agency, with a mandate of ensuring food security. Some other countries have food or grain reserves to address emergency food crisis situations. The time is apt to put machinery in place for the development of the agricultural sector. The National Food Reserve Agency bill is one of the tools to make this possible, especially in a period of flood, famine, and other emergency situations. The bill recognizes the need to fill the apparent gap in agricultural development and coordination programs and projects.
Senator Dixon Siraki, you are just becoming an attraction center. All our ladies from both sides. Okay. Thank you, Senator Nora.
The bill recognizes the need to fill the apparent gap in agricultural development and coordination of programs and projects in the country with the collaboration of national and international agencies. A well-managed strategic grain reserve will stabilize stable food prices for the benefit of the consumers and farmers alike. Therefore, establishing an agency for this purpose is very essential to enhance food and nutrition security. Objectives. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, agriculture Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, agriculture plays a pivotal role in the development and growth of every nation. Any country seeking to diversify its economy, alleviate poverty, create jobs, and ensure food security should prioritize agriculture. Recognizing the important role agriculture plays, Nigeria has made efforts to place the sector at the fore by introducing different intervention programs and policies backed by enabling laws made by this other chamber. A further step to be taken to ensure food security in our country at all times is formulate enabling laws that will address food insecurity. This bill seeks to establish the National Food Reserve Agency for the purposes of storing food grains and other food commodities for strategic purposes. By this bill, where the President declares a national food emergency, the agency is empowered to release food stock. It also makes provision to meet other food emergencies caused by drought or flood or any other national disaster as may be declared by the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The bill also empowers the agency to facilitate and provide guidelines for the establishment and maintenance of buffer stock in order to ensure price stabilization and food security and correct problems relating to the supply of designated commodities. With food reserves, food can be available to the most vulnerable population in times of crisis, while buffer stocks attempt to offset price movements and act as universal subsidies benefiting both the poor and the non-poor consumers. Recommendations. The bill, which is made up of 34 clauses, is divided into 5 parts. Part 1 deals with the establishment clause. Part 2 deals with the functions and powers of the agency. Part 3 establishes zonal offices. Part 4 specifies the appointment of the Director General and other staff. It also has a schedule and explanatory memoranda. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the committee strongly recommends that the passage of this bill into law will provide a legal backing and regulatory framework for the establishment of National Food Reserve Agency. In conclusion, the committee would like to thank the Senate President, Deputy Senate President, the entire Senate leadership, and the distinguished colleagues for the opportunity given to us to serve in this capacity. Thank you.
Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, I rise to move a motion for this chamber to resolve into the Committee of the Whole to consider the report on this bill.
Minority Leader. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I so second.
Those in favor that the Senate resolves into Committee of the Whole to consider the report, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Distinguished colleagues, we start from the first page most of the clauses shall be retained, but I will still take, sorry? So I will take one clause at a time. Those in favor that clause 1. Clause 1. Senator James Manager. Senator James Manager.
One, there shall be established. There shall is missing there. There shall be established a body to be known for everything about legislative drafting. There shall be established. The shall is not there. There is established a body to be known, which is not correct.
Yeah, that doesn't go in.
Point of order.
I'm Surajuddin Ajibola Bashiru. I represent Osun Central Senatorial District. With respect, the point of order is constitutional and is based on the Section 4 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the second schedule to the Constitution. Mr. Chairman, I take the indulgence to refer to the section of the Constitution. Section 4 of the Constitution, Mr. Chairman, provides for the amplitude of the powers of this National Assembly. And it provided in Section 4, subsection 3, that the power of the National Assembly to make laws for the peace, order, and good government of the Federation with respect to any matter included in the exclusive legislative list shall, safe as otherwise provided in the Constitution, be to the exclusion of the House of Assembly of the States. In the subsection 2, it said the National Assembly shall have power to make law for the peace, order, and good government of the Federation or any part thereof with respect to any matter included in the exclusive legislative list set out in Part 1 of the second schedule to this Constitution. Additional to that is that in addition and without that subsection 4, in addition and without prejudice to the powers conferred by section 2, subsection 2 of this section, the National Assembly shall have power to make law with respect to the following matters. That is to say, A, any matter in the concurrent legislative list set out in the first column of Part 2 of the second schedule to this Constitution to the extent prescribed in the second column opposite thereto, and B, any other matter with respect to which it is empowered to make laws in accordance with the provision of the Constitution. Based on these provisions, the extent of our power as a National Assembly is 1, to make law in respect to exclusive list set out in Part 1 of the second schedule to the Constitution, 2, concurrent legislative list set out in the first column of Part 2 of the second schedule to the Constitution, or 3, any other matter with respect to which it is empowered to make laws in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution. Mr. Chairman, I've looked at this Part 1 of second schedule of the Constitution and also Part 2 of the second schedule in respect to the column relating to the national legislature and all other provisions of the Constitution. There is no power that enables this National Assembly to make law in respect to full reserve agency that is proposed by this legislation. That's my submission.
Are you suggesting that we have no power to do this legislation? Senator Ibrahim Gobir.
sorry, Mr. Chairman, what I'm not suggesting, I'm submitting based on the provision and the constitutional provision that we don't have power to make law in respect to the agency that is proposed to make.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, distinguished colleagues. My name is Senator Ibrahim Godo. Yes, with due respect to my learned lawyer, but we have to understand that agriculture is under concurrent list, not under exclusive list. And therefore, we can actually enact this law. Because this is very fundamental and important. Because if we don't do it, then we will stand the risk of having problems. Because with the foreseen, let's say, famine coming in this country, and if we don't have this act, then we are going to have problem, actually, because we cannot help our people on emergency.
Thank you very much, Excellency. With due respect to my very dear colleague, I think his intervention is misplaced completely. It is misplaced because the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is very clear on the issue of agriculture. Agriculture is not in the exclusive legislative list. It is in the concurrent legislative list. The National Assembly has inherent jurisdiction to make laws for the good governance of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Where there is concurrence in functions, if any administration or legislator lower than the National Assembly makes law that is in conflict with this, our law supersedes. That is the position of the Constitution of this country.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, distinguished colleagues. I remain Muhammad Adamu Alero, representing Kebbi Central. Mr. Chairman, I'm rather amazed that the National Assembly has no power to make law on Food Reserve Agency. We all know that agriculture is on the concurrent list as far as the 1999 Constitution is concerned, which means the state and the federal government have jurisdiction as initiated by Mr. Chairman. Not only that, virtually all nations in the world do have food reserve agency. This is done in order to mitigate the scarcity of food arising either from flood, natural disaster, or even crisis of insurgency. Mr. President, more than ever before, Nigeria needs food reserve agency now. The security situation in this country has made it impossible for farmers to even go to their farm and work. So if we don't have this kind of agency, how do we feed our people? So I want to state very categorically that the National Assembly has power to make law on National Food Reserve Agency. We should therefore proceed with the consideration of this report on close by close. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Please let me ask Senator Jibola. So if the National Assembly cannot legislate on this, who is going to legislate? State Assembly?
The State Assembly that will legislate, because the residual power to make law in respect of what is not provided in the exclusive legislative list and concurrent list and any other enumerated provision of the Act, the Supreme Court in the plethora of cases has considered this position. And I will make reference to the National, Urban and Regional Planning Law. It was declared null and void by the Supreme Court because attention that agriculture is the exclusive legislative list. I want to say that if on the concurrent legislative list, even on the concurrent legislative list, there is a section for the state, there's a section for the federal government on concurrent list. So it is only the part that has to do with, I want to refer to paragraph H on the amplitude of the power of National Assembly in relation to agriculture. Yes.
So this aspect of food reserve, does it belong to states exclusively that we cannot legislate on it? Where is it written? What does the Constitution say about this? Which section of the Constitution?
Mr. Chairman, I first refer to section 4, Section 4, subsection 7, paragraph A. The House of Assembly of a state shall have power to make laws for the peace, order, and good government of the state or any part thereof with respect to the following matters. That is to say, A, any matter not included in the exclusive legislative list set out in part 1 of the second schedule to the Constitution. So to the extent that the issue is not on the exclusive legislative list, and I also further my argument that paragraph H in this concurrent legislative list did not also vest the same power expressly in the National Assembly with respect as desirable as the law may be, as an example may be made to foreign jurisdiction, will be acting ultra-virulent the Constitution if you go ahead and consider the bill.
So since the National Assembly is co-joined with the state legislatures in the concurrent legislative list, can't we use that as a basis to legislate on food reserve?